There are people who come into this world already carrying the weight of a story that isn't theirs. They inherit chaos, violence, poverty, a broken home. And long before they ever have a chance to choose who they want to be, the world chooses for them. Arthur Morgan was one of those people, raised by outlaws, molded by hardship. He never had the luxury of innocence. He didn't dream of becoming good or bad, he just tried to survive. And isn't that how most of us start? Doing what we can in the only way we know how. But the problem with being born into darkness is that, after a while, you start to believe that's all you deserve, that you are meant to be this way, angry, cold, numb, like there's a place inside you that can't be fixed anymore. A lot of people live like that. They wake up, go to work, smile at others, and go back home carrying a quiet belief that they'll never be anything more than what they've been. Not because they want to stay the same, but because no one ever showed them that change is possible. Arthur lived most of his life that way, trapped in a role he didn't choose, doing bad things because it was all he knew. But somewhere along the road, something changed. He started to see that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. And that's the thing about life. You don't have to be born right to end right. You just have to stop running long enough to see who you've become and decide if that's really all you want to be. Because in the end, we are not defined by how we start, but by the moment we finally choose to begin again. Loyalty is a beautiful thing until it isn't. It starts as love, devotion even. We stand beside someone because we believe in them, because they gave us purpose when the world gave us nothing. That was Arthur's truth. He followed Dutch like a son follows a father. He believed in his words, his dreams, his promises of freedom. For years, that loyalty gave him meaning. But one day, it began to take it away. And that's something many of us learn the hard way. We stay in places that hurt us, in friendships that drain us, in jobs that break us, in relationships that no longer feel like home, because walking away feels like betrayal. Because we tell ourselves that loyalty means staying, no matter the cost. But loyalty without truth is just another kind of blindness. It's doing wrong things for the right reasons until you forget what's right altogether. Arthur knew it. Deep down, he started to see the cracks, the lies, the greed, the violence that Dutch refused to see in himself. But he stayed, because love can be blinding, and faith, once given, is hard to take back. Maybe that's what makes loyalty so dangerous, when it's no longer about them and becomes about our fear of being alone. We don't want to lose the person or the dream or the version of ourselves that depended on them. So we close our eyes and keep following the wrong path, hoping it'll somehow lead to the right place, but it never does. Sooner or later, we all have to face the truth Arthur faced, that real loyalty isn't following someone to the end. It's knowing when to stop walking beside them, because sometimes the only way to be faithful to others is to finally be faithful to yourself. Sometimes, life doesn't ask you to slow down. It knocks the air out of your lungs and leaves you staring at the ceiling, wondering how you've spent all your years running in the wrong direction. For Arthur, that moment came with a cough. A quiet, crimson warning that his time was slipping away. Tuberculosis wasn't just a disease, it was a mirror. And for the first time, he had to look into it. He saw a man who had done terrible things. A man who hurt people because he thought he had no other choice. But behind the blood and the violence, he also saw something else. The faint outline of the person he could have been all along. And maybe that's what happens to all of us eventually. We go through life pretending we're fine, burying regrets, ignoring our reflection, telling ourselves that one day we'll change, until something forces us to stop. A breakup, a diagnosis, the loss of someone we love, moments that strip away all illusion and leave us face to face with the truth. It's cruel, but also sacred, because that's when we finally start to see clearly. Arthur's illness took his strength, his breath, his time, but it gave him something far more valuable: perspective. It made him softer, kinder, more human than he'd ever been before. And maybe that's the strange gift hidden in pain. It doesn't come to punish us. It comes to wake us. We all have a moment like Arthur's, When life holds up a mirror and asks, "Is this really who you want to be?" And if we're brave enough to answer honestly, that moment can change everything. I think what makes Red Dead Redemption 2 so powerful isn't the gunfights or the open world, it's the quiet moments, the small choices, the times you stop to help a stranger on the road or the times you don't. Because in this game, every little thing adds up. And that's what I love about it. The honor system. It's a simple concept, but it says something so true about life. You can't build honor overnight. You earn it slowly through your actions, through patience, mercy, and restraint, and you can lose it just as easily. One selfish choice, one cruel word, one moment of weakness. To me, that's not just a game mechanic. That's life. We're all walking around with our own invisible honor meter. No one can see it, but we feel it. It's the quiet weight of conscience that tells you when you've done something wrong, and the quiet peace when you've done something right. Arthur learns that too. He doesn't suddenly become a saint. He just starts trying, feeding the camp, helping strangers, doing the right thing even when no one's watching. Personally, I think that's where redemption really happens. Not in one final, cinematic act, but in the small, unseen moments that no one claps for. Because real goodness isn't about being flawless. It's about being faithful to your better self, even when it's hard. And maybe that's what honor truly means. It's not the absence of sin, and it's the courage to keep choosing what's right, even after you've already failed. In the end, Arthur doesn't die a perfect man, but he dies an honest one, a man who tried, truly tried, to make peace with himself and the world before time ran out. And I think that's all any of us can really hope for, not perfection. Just enough honor to look back and say, oh, I did the best I could. There's a scene near the end of Red Dead Redemption 2 that always stays with me. Arthur sits on that mountain, watching the sunrise, and for the first time in his life, he's not fighting anymore. Not running, not pretending, he just breathes. It's strange, but that moment of stillness feels like the most alive he's ever been. And personally, I think that's what peace really looks like. Not victory, not revenge, just acceptance. Arthur knows he can't undo what he's done. He can't erase the pain or fix every wrong, but he also knows that for the first time, he's tried to live with honor. And that's enough. I think a lot of people struggle with that idea. We live in a world obsessed with fixing everything. Your career, your body, your past. But the truth is, some things don't get fixed. They get accepted. And that's not weakness. That's freedom. When I think about Arthur, I think about how he finally stopped chasing an illusion of redemption. He found it in silence, in humility, in letting go. And in a way, that's something I wish more of us could learn. To forgive ourselves for not being perfect. To stop carrying the weight of everything we couldn't change. Personally, I've realized that acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It just means you've made peace with reality. You stop fighting what's already happened and start choosing what happens next. Arthur died knowing who he was. Not a hero, not a villain, just a man who finally found himself. And maybe that's the greatest kind of freedom we can ever have. Because sometimes peace isn't something you find out there. It's something you build inside when you finally stop running from who you are. One of the things that hits me most about Arthur Morgan is how, even in his final months, he thought less about himself and more about the people around him. He couldn't save the gang, he couldn't fix the past, but he could make a difference for John, Abigail, and Little Jack. And personally, I think that's what true legacy looks like. Not trophies or fame, but the quiet, lasting impact you leave on the lives you touch. It's the moments when no one is watching that shape the world in ways we don't always realize. Watching Arthur mentor John, push him to be present for Jack, to take responsibility and protect his family, makes me think about how easy it is to overlook those around us in real life. We get caught up in our own struggles, our own pain, our own regrets, and forget that our actions, even small everyday choices, can shape someone else's future. I remember times when a teacher, a friend, or even a stranger's patience or kindness changed how I saw myself. It didn't make headlines, it didn't feel heroic at the moment, but it stayed with me. That's what Arthur's story reminds me of. Our real power isn't in grand gestures, it's in consistently choosing to be a force for good, no matter how small the act. And there's something deeply human about that. I think we all want to matter. We all want to leave some mark that outlives us. Arthur's honor isn't about being perfect. It's about making the conscious choice to do right, even when it costs him, even when the world around him seems unfair. To me, that's inspiring because it feels attainable. It says that our legacy isn't measured by glory or recognition, but by the quiet, sometimes unseen ways we show up for others. Every kind word, every bit of guidance, every moment of patience adds up. Personally, I try to remind myself of that in my own life. When I help a friend without expecting anything in return or choose to listen when I'd rather walk away, I feel a little closer to what Arthur modeled. It's not dramatic, it's not cinematic, but it's real. And maybe that's the point. The most meaningful kind of heroism is invisible. It doesn't demand applause, it just leaves the world a little better than it was before. One of the moments that always hits me hardest is Arthur's relationship with Mary Linton. Here's a man who spent his whole life running, fighting, surviving, and chasing loyalty to a gang that defined him. And yet when Mary comes back into his life, asking him to leave it all behind and start fresh, he says no. And personally, I think that choice speaks more about heroism than any gunfight ever could. Arthur doesn't say no because he doesn't love her. He says no because he truly loves her. And sometimes loving someone means letting them go. I think we often confuse love with possession or with what we want from someone else. But real love, to me, is about thinking beyond your own needs. It's about stepping back, even when it hurts, because you want the best for the person you care about. Arthur could have run away with Mary and tried to rewrite his story, but he knew that would drag her into his chaos, and he made the hardest choice possible. He chose her well-being over his own desire. That's a lesson I carry with me. In life, we're constantly faced with decisions that test our integrity and compassion. Maybe it's helping a friend move through a crisis, even when it's inconvenient. Maybe it's giving up something we want so that someone else can thrive. Arthur's decision to let Mary go reminds me that heroism isn't always visible, and it's rarely easy. Sometimes it's about making a quiet, painful choice that no one else sees, but that matters deeply to the world of the person you're trying to protect. Personally, I think that's what makes Arthur so relatable. He isn't perfect, he makes mistakes, he hurts people, he fails, but when he chooses love over himself, even once, it shows everything he's capable of. And in those choices, we can see the same challenge in our own lives, to act not out of fear or desire, but out of care, empathy, and moral courage. Love, when it's true, isn't about comfort. It's about responsibility, sacrifice, and sometimes letting go. Arthur's choice is heartbreaking, but it's also inspiring because it shows that doing the right thing often comes at a personal cost, and that cost is worth paying. One of the moments that really changed how I see Arthur Morgan isn't a shootout or a gang mission. It's his conversation with Sister Calderon. Here's this rugged, hardened man who's faced countless dangers and lived through years of violence, admitting that he's afraid. And personally, I think that's one of the most powerful things a story can show us. That courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to act despite it. Arthur sits there sick and weak, and for the first time, he really faces himself. He doesn't hide behind loyalty, duty, or the gang's chaos. He asks, if this is who I've been, what do I want to be with the time that I have left? That question hits me every time because it's something I think we all struggle with. Life doesn't give us endless do-overs, and the truth is, it's easy to drift along without ever confronting the person we've become. Sister Calderon doesn't give him a speech. She doesn't tell him what to do. She simply points him toward love, toward service, toward action that matters. And personally, I think that's such an important lesson. Real heroism isn't flashy or dramatic. It's showing up even when you're scared, even when you're tired, and choosing to make your life count in the ways you can. When I think about this in everyday life, I remember moments when I've avoided something hard because it was uncomfortable, having a difficult conversation, helping a friend in crisis, standing up for someone who needed it. Arthur's moment with Sister Calderon reminds me that those are the times that define us. The choices that require courage, selflessness, and honesty are the ones that truly matter. Personally, I think that's why Arthur's story resonates so deeply. He could have stayed numb, could have given up, could have followed Dutch blindly until the end. But he chose differently. He chose to use whatever time he had left to make a difference, to show love, to act with honor. And I believe that's a lesson we can carry with us. That our lives are made meaningful not by what we take or achieve, but by how we respond to fear and how we show up for others. Arthur Morgan teaches us that it's never too late to act with purpose, that heroism is found in courage, love, and service, even when it costs us something. And personally, I try to carry that lesson every day, reminding myself that the small, brave, intentional choices are what shape who we truly are.